Good morning. Did you sleep well? According to research, not getting a good night's sleep can have detrimental effects on your cognition and stamina.
This is Sucrose. So of course you guys voted on Sucrose. She has actually been she's been on the polls for a little while. Not nearly as long as Kaya and Diona, but you guys are keeping the meme alive. I'm in love with it. Sucrose ended up with 45% of 53,000 votes. That is pretty insane. Very quickly before we get into it, I did actually enable memberships on the channel, and there is a little bit of merch coming if you guys are interested in any of those things. Just look down below the video in the description, above the description. Once they approve the merch and it is community approved, you guys can buy some sweet merch that kind of looks like something like this. I don't know how I'll show it to you somewhere. Anyways, let's get into Sucrose. So Sucrose is a animo, however you guys want to say that. She's probably one of the more interesting characters just in terms of like everything about her. She's super cute in like just her personality and everything. She's really cool, and I've been wanting to build her for quite some time simply because she's got some very interesting things about her with her talents. I don't have any of her constellations, but you know, hey, we'll take a look at all of that. And plus she can use the Viridescent Veneer, so gotta fall in love with that. Our normal attack is just gonna be 4 attacks using wind spirits. She is a catalyst user, so she's just gonna spat out some anemo damage. Charge attack is going to do an AoE anemo damaging move, and plunging attack, she's going to turn into anemo, fall to the ground, and hit with anemo based AoE damage. Now, as I've stated in the past, you know, resources are tight for me. I don't have a whole lot of resources anymore, so I didn't level up all of the stuff that I should have, but I tried to level up the things that were important. But I will keep, if you can keep what I have in mind, level 1, level 2, level 1, just wait until we take a look at like how these things actually do. Anyways, normal attack, this is how you can kind of see how it breaks down. Very low damage on the catalyst attack here, but she's a catalyst user. She's not supposed to be like an extremely gnarly DPS, although you can build her as a DPS, and we'll get into that. This is kind of mediocre in terms of like how it breaks down, but like I said, we'll get to that. Next, we have our elemental skill, which is called a stable anemo hypostasis creation 6308. Yeah. Creates a small wind spirit that pulls opponents and objects towards its location, launching opponents within its AoE, and deals anemo damage. So this is one of the coolest moves to actually use. I like the way it looks. I like the way it functions. It just does straight anemo damage. It's just really cool. So you can see kind of how it breaks down. It's on a 15-second cooldown. That is pretty high, and there's a way that we can get around that by using a specific weapon, but we'll talk about that later. Next, we actually have our elemental burst, which is called Forbidden Creation, Isomer 75, Type 2. Sucrose hurls an unstable concoction that creates a large wind spirit. While it persists, the large wind spirit will continuously pull in surrounding opponents and objects, launching nearby opponents and dealing anemo damage. The only thing I have against this is the fact that it's actually something that she physically throws is kind of annoying, because of the simple fact that it's going to auto aim at an enemy, and it may not be the enemy that you want it to go to. So I wish that if I held it, I could position it. If I could just position it, period. If she just threw it in the direction I was looking, that would make it a lot better to me. But that's a minor nitpick, and that goes into more of like a mechanical thing that's wrong with the game more than just Sucrose. Of course, this does have elemental absorption, which is kind of a common thing with anemo characters. If it comes in contact with hydro, there needs to be a space there. Mihoyo, pyro, cryo, or electro, it will basically imbue the anemo damage, creating swirl and do extra damage on top of that. Very nice. Here you can kind of see how that breaks down damage over time, additional elemental damage, which is coming from this elemental absorption, the duration, the cooldown, and the energy cost. So it is kind of high on energy for 80. So we'll kind of keep that in mind as we'll be trying to mitigate that with either our weapon or our artifacts. Next, we do have Catalyst Conversion. When Sucrose triggers a swirl reaction, all characters in the party with that matching element, excluding Sucrose, have their elemental mastery increased by 50 for 8 seconds. So this is very interesting because if you're using a ton of elemental reactions in your team, if your team isn't focused on like a lot of white damage or physical damage, this is actually really interesting because it just enables you to do more reaction based damage. It doesn't inherently increase the number that you see on screen when it comes to your raw attacks, but whenever you create melt, vaporize, anything like that, it's going to increase that output damage, which is very, very nice. And it lasts for a whole 8 seconds. So think about like pairing Sucrose with Diluc. If you have a situation where you're able to freeze a lot of enemies and you're doing, pyro based damage with Diluc and increasing elemental mastery, that's just going to increase your melt damage for a whole 8 seconds. And the way that Diluc can just fire off his elemental skill 3 times and stuff like that, like, oof. Yeah, Sucrose becomes very, very valuable right there. Next, we have Mollis Favonius. When a stable hypostate 6308 or Forbidden Creation Isomer 75 Type 2 hit an opponent, increase all party members, excluding Sucrose, elemental mastery by an amount equal to 20% of Sucrose's elemental mastery for 8 seconds. So again, we are basically increasing elemental mastery, and you can pump Sucrose full of elemental mastery very, very easily. Artifacts can do it. You can do it with your weapon if you want to. It's not very hard to get a ton of elemental mastery on her, and this 20% is like, so if this raises it by 50, I'm pretty sure mine is currently at 343. So I mean, yeah, you can pump them full of quite a bit. That would enable me, what, 68, 69 if it rounds up. It's just for free, by the way. It's just free. Just for using any of this. Then last but not least, we do have a stable invention. When Sucrose crafts character and weapon enhanced materials, she has 10% chance to obtain double the product, which just kind of helps save on resources, which I'm starved for. Next, let's take a look at some constellations here. So as you can see, I don't have any constellation levels on her. I've pulled her literally one time, and I wish I could pull more. So at level 1, our elemental skill gains 1 additional charge. That's awesome. I really, really want this. I really, really want this. At level 2, our elemental burst is increased by 2 seconds, so that's actually pretty big. 2 full more seconds of just raw anemo-based damage and a chance to swirl damage. Oh, it's good. Flawless Alchemistress, I can read. This increases your elemental skill by 3. Perfectly fine. At level 4, every 7 normal and charged attacks, Sucrose will reduce the cooldown of a stable Anemo Hypostasis Creation 6308 by 1 to 7 seconds. That's very interesting. And I didn't do any research on this to tell why that's such a large range and how that actually works. But if that works how it reads, I would think that it would be a random chance between 1 and 7. I don't know. I'll try to edit in some information if I can find some. At level 5, we're going to increase our elemental burst by 3. Okay. And at level 6, if our elemental burst triggers an elemental absorption, all party members gain a 20% elemental damage bonus for the corresponding absorbed element during its duration. This is huge. This is so big. That's just extra damage, just for free. So like we were talking about with Melt earlier, if you use your elemental burst with Sucrose and, apply Swirl with a pyro-based reaction on the field, you're gonna freaking just increase everybody's pyro damage by 20%. And then Diluc or Zhengling or freaking Bennett can come in and just like smack people around. Like, that's so good. Based on her talents and all of her constellations, as you can kind of tell, Sucrose is definitely more of like a supporting role. There are a couple of different ways that you can build her to be not only a support, but also a DPS. Personally, I do feel like more people are going to lean towards the support option, which is what we're going to look at first. But the DPS option is kind of interesting, and I think the most likely of scenarios is if you have some of these constellation levels. I think at level 4 it really like secures her as a decent DPS because you can just, you know, reduce the cooldown of your elemental skill. But I think at level 1 and level 2 it does enable you to be more of a DPS, but level 4 is where it really just blows the whole thing open. So if you already have her at level 1 or 2, you can consider doing DPS. If you have her at level 4, I would say, you know, it's really up to you how you want to play her, whether DPS or support. But ultimately, we're going to go over support first and then we'll talk about DPS. So Sucrose as a support is actually cheaper than a lot of other supports, in my opinion. You know, you see these supports running around that need like these super like 5-star like refinement 2 or 3 weapons to be like top tier. Like Sucrose she just needs 4 stars. And while that's not super available to everyone, I understand it's way more available than some other characters. Anyways, absolute top choice is going to be the sacrificial fragments. Reason being is not only is its secondary stat, the bonus stat that you get, going to be elemental mastery, but it's going to go along with all of the other sacrificial weapons. So after damaging an opponent with your elemental skill, the skill has a 40% chance to end its own cooldown and can only occur once every 30 seconds. So as you refine it up, that chance increases and stuff like that, but a 40% chance is not bad. That's a pretty decent odds that you're going to hit that. So being able to do your elemental skill even more often, that's it's pretty nice. Definitely, that's the one I went with. Luckily, I ended up having it, so Sucrose definitely got the treatment on that one. Next, we have the Mappa Mare. I'm assuming that's how that's pronounced. It also is going to be increasing elemental mastery. Remember how we said elemental mastery is not that hard to get on Sucrose here. Not only is it going to increase elemental mastery, but triggering an elemental reaction grants 8% elemental damage bonus for 10 seconds. So as we were just talking about with Constellations, this just enables more damage bonus. So it's just giving extra damage for free. Next, we actually have the Favonius Codex. Now, this is our first deviation from the Elemental Mastery substat, but this also has Elemental Recharge, which of course, as a support, makes a ton of sense, especially since our Elemental Burst is kind of expensive at 80 energy. The passive on here is crit hits have a 60% chance to generate small amount of particles, which will regenerate 6 energy for the character. This can only occur once every 12 seconds. So this one is a little bit deviated from the first two, but it makes some sense here because gaining that energy is going to be super crucial to firing off the burst as often as possible. And I think ultimately, when it comes down to building Sucrose as a support, whatever weapon you end up using, having however you need to set it up. If you go with energy recharge on your weapon, definitely try to focus on elemental mastery in your artifacts, and vice versa. If you have elemental mastery on your weapon, energy recharge may make more sense for you in the artifacts. Last but not least, I would also consider, not necessarily push very hard, but consider, just because it is a decent option and it's very free to play friendly, Thrilling Tales of Dragon. Now, there are a couple of other weapons out there, like the Magic Guide has Elemental Mastery, Otherworldly Story has Energy Recharge. You could go with those if you want to keep the theme of Elemental Mastery or Energy Recharge, but their passives are I could understand one if you use it, but I would actually say that Thrilling Tales of Dragons makes more sense, especially if you're going for a budgeted Sucrose in terms of support build, because even though it has HP, it is going to let you stay alive longer. But when switching characters, the new character taking the field has their attack increased by 24% for 10 seconds, and that can only occur every 20 seconds. That's a lot of attack. That's a lot of attack. I would bet to say that that one is the most free-to-play friendly and the easiest to get a hold of, but also just super solid in general. Now, when it comes to artifacts, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this is pretty cut and dry. If you don't run, where in the world did it go? Veridicent Veneer on Sucrose, I might have to come to your house and spank you. Me and Sucrose are gonna come by and we're just gonna beat you up. The reason is because not only is this gonna give you an anemo-based damage bonus, it's also going to increase the swirl damage by 60% and decreases opponent's elemental resistance to the element infused in that swirl by 40% for 10 whole seconds. So it's just going to enable so much extra damage especially if you're already doing melts and vaporizes and stuff like that. Your team is already set up to have those reactions built in. So once you start adding in sucrose to that and reducing the elemental resistance, which by the way, I'm gonna have to talk about this when we go over, I am gonna do a video about like swirl and elemental reactions, stuff like that. It was kind of requested in the last video. I am gonna do a video on that. It's just because the formula is not completely stamped out, it's kind of hard to like create that formula. I really want there to be like a solid formula other than freaking 10 decimal places is the best guess we have. Once you are doing those reactions anyways, you're reducing the elemental resistance, which even though it says reduced by 40%, once you go into the negatives, apparently it's halved. But we'll talk about that later. Meaning if the enemy has a resistance of 10, then you could reduce it by 10, and then the remaining 30 that is on the extra enemy isn't actually reduced by 30. So it's not like you're taking 30 more bonus damage. You're actually reducing that by half after that point, which makes it 15%. So you are still dealing 15% bonus damage, but it's not 30 like I initially would have thought. As far as other artifact sets go, I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could go with like Wanderer's Troop for the extra elemental mastery. You could like, I don't know, like just go with Veritas and Veneer. I'm telling you, it is like top choice. It makes so much sense. If you wanted to do something different, I can't advise against that, but you know, Wanderer's Troop I guess would make some sense. And what was it, the instructor set, you know, 2 pieces of Wanderer Troop, 2 pieces of instructor, sure, but just only do that while you're farming Veritas and Veneer, okay? Now, in terms of our substats, these last 3 pieces are going to be highly coveted for Sucrose because you basically get to choose which direction you want to take Sucrose at this point. Energy recharge, like I said, is important. If you don't have it on your weapon, I would highly consider it on my timepiece here. If you do not care about using her ult very often, if you are just going for extra, you know, swirl based damage and stuff like that, then, you know, maybe you want to go for elemental mastery here, but that would again be up to you and how you play. Otherwise, elemental mastery is top choice on all 3 pieces. If you can get elemental mastery on all 3 pieces, you're going to be doing great. Another thing to consider though, the goblet here could also benefit from having a Nemo damage if you want a little bit of extra oomph out of your Sucrose, but that is kind of treading into the area of like kind of sort of pseudo DPS with like a hybrid type of situation, which honestly, because I'm using my Venti set of Veritas and Veneer, that's kind of what mine is set up as. But again, that's just completely up to you. If I had an elemental mastery piece leveled up, I would be using it on my goblet. Otherwise, I'm just using a Nemo based damage. But anyways, that's kind of how you would want to split that. Now, when it comes to these talents and how you want to level them up, personally, like I said, I just don't have the resources anymore, but I have been trying to focus on the elemental skill as much as possible because I feel like I'm going to use that as often as I can. And with sacrificial fragments, it enables me to reset the cooldown every so often. So it's very nice to have this pumped up as much as I can. After that, I would definitely focus on your elemental burst. That just makes so much more sense. And then last but not least, if you really even wanted to, you could go for the elemental, or you could go for the normal attack, but that's just, as a support, you hardly ever use it anyways. One quick note, as a support, I do think that a lot of people will compare Sucrose to Venti, but try to imagine Sucrose is an elemental mastery buffer more than anything. She's not necessarily a Venti replacement. She can do some things that Venti can do, but just imagine that she's not really exactly the same. She's more of like just giving elemental mastery. She is the enabler for reaction-based comps to do more damage. Venti doesn't do that as well as Sucrose does, hands down. He can enable more damage, of course, with Veritas and Veneer, but that's a null issue because that's not unique to Venti. Sucrose takes advantage of that as well. I think what Sucrose has in her kit is just a ton of extra elemental mastery, and that's why you want to build as much elemental mastery on her as possible. Now, as a DPS, this is This is where it's going to get a little bit interesting, and I think some people are going to be super into this. This, of course, isn't the same as a support. This kind of gets a little expensive in the weapon department, but here we go. So top choice is actually going to be Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds. So this weapon right here has crit rate chance, which is amazing. Not only is that amazing to have on a freaking weapon, it increases move speed by 10%, and when in battle, gain an 8% elemental damage bonus every 4 seconds with a max of 4 stacks. Lasts until the character falls or leaves combat. So just by having this on her, you're going to gain up to 32% extra anemo-based damage just for having this weapon. And you're going to have crit rate built into it as well. That's gnarly. Next would be the Skyward Atlas. Now, of course, neither the first or the second weapon is very free-to-play friendly, but we'll get into some stuff, don't worry. This one actually has attack percent chucked on it, so that's actually pretty good. Increasing attack on DPS is, of course, amazing. Increases elemental base damage by 12%. Normal attacks have a 50% chance to earn the Favor of the Clouds, which actively seeks out nearby opponents to attack for 15 seconds, dealing 160% attack damage, and can only be used once every 30 seconds. So that's extra DPS. The second part of that is extra DPS, but the increased elemental damage bonus by 12% is also super nice. One thing that Sucrose actually has is her Ascension stat. Whenever you ascend her, she actually gains anemo-based damage anyways, so that's pretty nice. Next, we actually have the Widsith. So this is actually crit damage, which is, again, amazing. A little bit more free-to-play friendly, not super free-to-play friendly, but a little bit more. When the character takes the field, they will gain a random theme song for 10 seconds. This can only occur once every 30 seconds. So depending on which one you have, either your attack will be increased by 60%, you'll increase your elemental damage by 48%, or the elemental mastery is increased by 240. So that's the big one to me. With Sucrose, that's huge. Now, sometimes I would also question if the Widsith would actually be better as a support weapon, but the fact that it's a random chance, the fact that it has crit damage, it leans so much further to DPS side. It would be too much chance to just hit that elemental mastery and try to work that into her talents and stuff like that. But still, it's very, 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 very cool. Next, we actually have the Solar Pearl, which, if I'm not mistaken, this is the Battle Pass weapon. So it has crit rate based into it. Normal attack hits will increase elemental skill and elemental burst damage by 20% for 6 seconds. And likewise, elemental skill and elemental burst hits increase normal attack damage by 20% for 6 seconds. If you bought the Battle Pass and you have the Solar Pearl, it could be actually pretty decent. Next, we actually have Mappa Mare, which we talked about as a support weapon. It also works very well here, considering that it does have elemental mastery and stuff like that. It kind of takes her into the direction of doing extra reaction-based damage, swirl damage, stuff like that, but still very, very good. And last but not least, we have the Magic Guide, which increases damage against opponents affected by Hydro or Electro by 12%, but that's not really what we're after. We're more after elemental mastery. But if you can work in a situation where you have a team that works with Hydro and Electro, like if you have an Electro Charge team, or if you have like a Vaporized team, then you're pretty much going to be using the Electro or the Hydro elements anyways. So I guess you can increase the damage on those. Not my favorite choice out of the DPS weapons, but definitely the most free-to-play friendly out of all of those. Another option that I would highly consider is the Elemental Orb. It's still a 3-star weapon, so it's not going to give you like crazy numbers or anything, but it's super budget friendly. It has Elemental Mastery, and upon causing Vaporize, Electrocharge, Frozen, or Hydro-infused swirl reactions, increases attack by 20% for 12 seconds. That actually could work out pretty well for you. Now, in terms of artifacts, gonna go ahead and say it, Veridescent Veneer makes the most sense here. Just simply not. So I'm not saying this because this is like all right, I am saying this because this is just a freaking amazing set. Not only is it going to increase your damage, but it's going to increase the amount of bonus damage that you're going to get by reducing resistances. It works as a super good support piece because not only is it going to help your other team members do extra elemental damage, but it works as a very good offensive set because it increases your damage, and then it increases the damage that you can do as the character that wears this set. It's just good, okay? It's just good. Don't sleep on it. Again, if you wanted to switch it up and go with like Wanderer's Troop or something, I guess you could. Or if you wanted to add in some extra attack, you could do that. But I don't think you'll get enough benefit to make it outweigh the fact that this will be amazing. Now, in terms of your substats or your stats on your artifacts in general, crit rate, crit damage always are super important on your DPSs. If your weapon already has crit chance or crit damage worked into it, definitely try to focus on a circlet that has the opposite so that you can kind of gain those at the same time. After that though, elemental mastery of course still works wonders. That can be on both of these other two pieces. If you don't have crit chance on here or crit damage on here, you can also put elemental mastery there. An emo damage is going to be huge, which like I said is kind of what my Sucrose is set up as, but she's more of a support for me, but with a hybrid type of situation, simply because I don't have a cup that has elemental mastery leveled up on it. And then energy recharge could be considered if you want to be able to do that burst more often, because it is kind of expensive at 80 energy. Elemental recharge does make some sense. And as always, if you have all of that baked into the kit and you just need to choose anything else, attack should be the fallback there. Now as a DPS, you're going to be using this normal attack quite often, so definitely try to focus on that first. And then after that, it just comes down to which one of these you want to power up. I would personally go with the elemental skill first and then the elemental burst. I feel like I'm going to use this more often than I use this, but again, that would be kind of how you play her. If you don't have her you know, using the burst as often, if you don't have energy recharge baked into the kit, you know, definitely focus on this first. But if you want to focus on this and bake energy recharge into the kit, then definitely go that route. Just remember, as a DPS, it works best at the higher constellation levels. At level 4, you really do start to unlock the DPS capabilities of Sucrose, but I do think at level 1 and level 2, you can make a viable DPS for some time. Now, let's go use Sucrose to do something here. What do we want to go do? If you wanted to see my pseudo or my artifacts really quick, you can kind of take a look here. That's, you know, flower. That's the feather. This is again my Venti set that I use on Venti all the time. Energy recharge there, anemo based damage there, and elemental mastery there. If I could get an elemental mastery Veridescent Veneer piece on either of these two, I will definitely, like, you can see I have one here, it's just not leveled up. I will definitely make that like Sucrose's main piece, but I don't have any other Veridescent Veneer pieces here. Anyways, so we're actually going to be going to fight some Hilitroll mobs, simply just because they have, there's multiple enemies, and being able to use Sucrose to kind of crowd control and stuff like that is really fun. Like I stated earlier, doing, you know, comparing her to Venti is not like the best thing, but she's just fun to use. So, elemental skill, boom. See how it sucks them all together, and then you can just kind of, you know, do some swirl-based damage and stuff like that. Super, super cool. Now, let's hit this again. Sucks them up. Get a charge attack off there, blows them back. Now, if you ever are trying to, like, actually farm out... What are those things called? Dandelion seeds. If you're ever trying to farm out dandelion seeds, Sucrose's charge attack actually does work. I couldn't get her normal attack to work, which is kind of weird. But, you know, you have to hit the dandelion seeds with an emo-based attacks or something like that. I'm glad it worked. Anyways. Nice, I got that. All right, so let's hit this. Because there is actually a little fire right there, this is going to be kind of interesting. So I'm going to run around this side. See if I can get them to kind of come closer this way. Hello. Boom. And then you can see we have swirl damage. That's super, super cool. We did get the cooldown. Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. So let's hit this Q. And you can see I wanted to throw it to the big guy, but it wouldn't let me. So as you can see, it is swirling. That's so good. That's so good. And we can just keep hitting here. Now, I mean, like I said, remember my talents, that's a level 2 talent. Now, my artifacts are definitely carrying my anemo damage right there, but super, super cool. And it was a crit, apparently. Yeah, you can kind of see. I do like the fact that her normal attacks don't actually... They don't have much of a cooldown, which is actually nice. Can we burn the shield? So let's swirl here. Yeah. There we go. And there you can see we're doing 900. Is that a 984 swirl damage? Like, come on, dude. That's crazy. At level, like, at the low level talents that I have, I actually really like that. I think that just goes to show that Sucrose could definitely be... She could definitely be used for a lot of different things. And there you can see we could just kind of create like all of these reactions and just melt things away. No pun intended. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much Sucrose. I think that she is one of the better supports simply because she plays into the fact that this game uses elemental reactions, and like we've talked about before, there is no such thing as a bad character. There's just bad team comps. And I think Sucrose allows the team comps that are already good to excel even further. Simply because the elemental reaction based damage is honestly what enables the high tier level teams to just excel. Melt comps, vaporize comps, you know, all of the stuff that enables those teams to be so good, so top tier. Sucrose is going to just help accelerate that. There's a reason. There's usually a reason why you see Sucrose in a lot of other YouTubers like showcase videos where they'll, you know, showcase like super high damage numbers or something like that. There's usually a Sucrose in there because not only is she enabling extra elemental reactions damage and stuff like that, but Very Distant Veneer works in and helps do like extra damage bonus and stuff like that. She's yeah, she's one of those like really good characters. So thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. I'll put another poll up. I think this go around we do have another 5-star being introduced. And since I've been trying to work on Child for the last like 2 weeks or so, just so that simply I could put him into these polls. I honestly am kind of weary about talking about him because he has so much depth to him. And even though I've been using him for a couple of weeks now, I still don't think that he's, I don't feel like I have like a solid grasp on like high tier level play with him, but he's super fun to use, super fun to play, and I'll be happy to go over some stuff about him. But yeah, I'll post another poll. We'll go over somebody else in a couple of days, and yeah. So thank you guys. See you later.